Hi folks, how's it going? Yes, I ducked down just so I could do the cover image clipped. I'm a nerd. I'm learning. The Instagrammers, YouTubers, they know this stuff. I'm learning still. Just still. Hello. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you're coming to us today. I hope you are warm if you're in North America, because it's been a bit chilly. Lots of snow and storms everywhere, it seems, from the west coast to the east coast. Here in Calgary, we are coming out of 4 days of deep freeze. Oh my God, it was cold. Even for us, it was really cold. And so yesterday we went outside, my daughter and I, to take her to practice. They didn't have practice all day, or classes, so she hadn't been outside since the morning. And we left the house, got out at I don't know, 4 o'clock, 3:30, and it was minus 11 Celsius, which might freak some people out, but we were like, oh my God, it's so warm. I don't need a jacket. This feels great. Because we'd been minus 40 and then for about 4 days. So it felt good. And now it is still in the minus 10 to 15 range and snowing. So we're supposed to get snow all through the night, all tomorrow. So it's winter. We didn't have winter for November or December, and it's hitting us now. And anyone who's been around me for a long time knows I am not going to complain about that. I love me some winter. But I do get to play with rainbows, and that certainly brightens up winter, doesn't it? That's why I'm so glad I went with this pastel grunge. It's just so cheery. It's just so youthful and spring-like and joyful. Even my monochromatic black, gray, white, there's something about that gradation that just is comforting, right? It feels good when it works. And so we're really happy about it. So I'm excited for today's block. Thank you to everyone who's already been sewing, who's been hanging out, who's been watching the video, sharing the video. Really appreciate it. This is the 2024 Quilters Playcation Adventure Sewalong. We are going all rainbows, all year, once a week, here on Instagram, and still trying to get onto YouTube with the videos without having to re-record them. Working on it. Bear with me. Hopefully it will come. Hopefully it will come. I just realized I didn't bring water in here. But there's water in my iron thing, so I may take some of that. Because we're quilters. That's what we do. Yeah, so we are here, we're making rainbows, and we're sewing. This week, I've gone with something really very simple, really straightforward, another basic kind of improv technique. This is not just completely, there is a technique to doing this block, to have it lay nicely, to minimize waste, but also kind of have it be fun and each one unique. Now, I do want to clarify that when I am making the blocks this year, because I know that I'm going to do 49 blocks, and to me that is a 7x7 layout of a square quilt. Not that you have to do it that way, but that's the way I'm doing it, to show you everything. But should you make every single block, I am trying to introduce the blocks so that compositionally they will look good if you sew them in order and place them in order in your quilt top. Does it mean you have to place them in that order in your quilt top? Absolutely not. You can do whatever the heck you want. They don't even have to be a quilt. Remember that. But in my head, that's how I'm designing it. So because I had gone curves and on this kind of angle, I wanted to have something that looked quite different from that. I also wanted to not have background in this block because this one had a lot of background in it. And depending on how you made it, you may have more or less background in it. Now this one could go horizontal as well if you prefer, but in my head I'm picturing it vertical, so that's the way I've made it. It gets made the same way. It's just whether you rotate the block. For example, we could put the block on its side for a bit of a different look. Totally works too. Actually works really well. We'll see, depending on what the next block is, might determine how that one goes. Either way, you got horizontal or vertical, allowing you in there. No background, just our 6 colors this week. Super easy block, so let's get to it. All right, I've got my monochrome all cut and waiting for us. So let's move over here. We'll say hello to the ladies. There they are. I love those ladies so much. And we'll come down to the cutting and sewing table. So basic supplies this week. You're gonna need a rotary cutter, your scissors, obviously, a ruler. I chose to use a skinnier ruler just because it's easier to cut my strips. I have my strips. We're going to be stopping sewing. You can chain piece this a little bit, but I prefer to go one piece at a time. So it does slow it down. But with the start stopping, I love myself a good little thread catcher spider in the machine there. So off of my fabric, I cut out 6 strips. Hey Cheryl, what size should those strips be? Well, that's a great question. If you've already decided on the size of your blocks, what you are going to want to do is, let's say we're assuming we're making the block vertical. Again, once it's finished, you can spin it. But we're assuming we're making the block vertical. So if you were making 10.5-inch tall or square blocks, then you're going to want these strips to be at least 11 inches. Okay, a little bit more, not exactly 10.5 inches, but they don't need to be ridiculously longer. And then how wide they're going to be depends on how wide or what that measurement is. So for 10.5 inches, if you were to divide that by 6, which is kind of a weird division. So I'm just going to round up, right? What's a close one to there to divide by 6? You know, I could either go 9 and that's 1.5, or 12 and that's 3. So let's cut the difference and cut those at about 2.5 inches. You do want to give yourself a little bit more width, that you will be trimming stuff off, but you want to give yourself a little bit more width, because if you make them all really straight and then we go to sew them together, you're not going to be able to get the angles. You'll see in my original one, right, we have really fun angles to kind of break it up so it's a little bit less straight. I am going to point out a mistake that I made in here. I did not measure the first block that I had made. I thought I had made them at 10.5 inches and I made it at 9.5 or 11.5 inches. So I made this one entirely too small. Rather than remake it, I just cut the other one down. So now my blocks are going to be 10.5 inches. That's how it's going to be. And I'm totally fine with that. That's why I suggest frequently, don't cut things until you're truly ready to make that decision. So I have my 6 strips in each color. These ones are about 2.5 inches or so wide. I think if I were to cut my first block, I'd have like a 9.25 inch square. So I've given myself some wiggle room in all of this. So we're just going to work adding one strip at a time. I have my first one here, and I'm going to layer these fabrics right sides up. And we're going to do that angled cut that I love so much. Now, which way you angle it, whether you kind of go from the bottom left to the top right or right to left, really doesn't matter. Just personal preference. My second strip here is actually a little bit narrower on the bottom. So I'm going to go from there up to the top, and I'm maximizing how much I can get out of here. I'm really lucky. I don't think you can see it on the camera. Well, you can if I zoom in here. I can see, because I'm working light to dark, which I've done for pressing reasons, but also for this reason, I can see the fabric underneath. I can see this fabric coming up through here. So it tells me where I can cut. So I'm going to cut from this bottom corner here up to there. Now, why are we doing this as opposed to just, you know, kind of cutting an angle and sewing it, because that can happen real quick, right? Where we start turning it into kind of a funny angle. And this way it helps keep it a little bit straighter. Okay, that's all. So we're just trying to make our lives a little bit easier. Sometimes it takes a step or two more, but the end result is worth it. So you're just going to cut using a ruler. I prefer a ruler in this case. There'll be times when we're going to do curves, but for this block, we're going to use a ruler. And see, I'm only just cutting this kind of a strip off. We don't need that. So then I can go ahead and sew that together and then repeat. Repeat, repeat, repeat. I think a lot of our blocks this year, I will bring you over to the machine. A lot of our blocks this year are going to be exactly like this. We're going to be assembling there's my spider going in. We're going to be assembling in kind of a repetitive motion, but it's only ever going to be 5 or 6 seams most likely, so it's pretty quick sewing. Then I'm going to go ahead and just press this. I'm going to press in the direction of the darker piece so that I don't have any shadowing in my lighter piece. I do recommend pressing as you go. It'll just help keep the block nice and flat and help you trim it up. So now on the next one, again, you can see that this fabric kind of coming through here, but I'm going to switch the angle for my cut. I'm going to go from the bottom left up to the right this time. There we go. And sew the next piece. And that's how it goes. Cut, sew, press, repeat. And you'll see after I press this what I meant by the block kind of staying straight as opposed to a tendency to turn. If your block is turning a little bit, have no fear. You just need to do a cut in the opposite direction and it'll help get it back on track. So see, we're staying pretty straight. I'm gonna have my next piece on. Again, I'm overlapping about, I don't know, maybe 5/8 of an inch. And I'm just, this one is a little bit harder to see through, so I'm just double checking that I have caught it underneath. And we'll go from there. If it sounds like a herd of elephants is coming at us upstairs, it's because there practically is. My son is home, as he is in the afternoons these days. But we have a bonus dog with us for a couple of weeks. And she's a bit of a beast. She's a sweetheart, so lovable, so snuggly. But she's a pit bull cross and weighs, I don't know, 60 pounds or more. And our puppy loves her so much. so much. And so he is forever chasing her around the house. And so then they sound like a herd of elephants running around upstairs. And of course, my son, being an 11-year-old boy, gets them wound up too, right? Because that's what they do. Okay. Second last one. I'm going to go opposite direction again. Hold that down. There we go. I really like to clean as I go if I remember. Oh, apparently I missed a little cut. If I remember, that's why I keep my little garbage tin. It was an old tea tin. If you keep a small one there, it's less likely to create a giant mess. Because when it gets full, you can't put any more in, and then you just empty it frequently. And I do have a bigger garbage in the room. And I just empty all my trimmings into that. And then depending on what I'm sewing on, that gets emptied once a month or so. I don't ever put food or anything in it to make sure it doesn't get gross. Okay. One more. One more. See, super easy block. Did not lie to you. Fast one. So if you're stuck inside these days because of the weather, it's a nice easy block to make. You can make a whole bunch of them and have some fun with it. This idea in repeat can go really well. I do want to mention, if you're going along and you realize, oh, I didn't cut my strips wide enough, this is definitely not going to be big enough for what I want. Let's say you realize that a couple strips in, you can just cut new strips that are a little bit wider. Rather than adding more on the end, just cut a few that are a little bit wider. If it's still not quite wide enough, you need just a little bit more. Take your end strip off and make that one a little bit wider. See if you can do those things first before you have to remake the whole block. If you're going to be way, way off, you could remake the whole block, or you could make your life easier and put background around the whole thing and then square it up to the size you want. Nothing saying you can't do that, right? Alrighty, last one there. Give this a good press and then give the block a final press. This one should lay flat for you, no problem, but remember you can always use your flatter pressing spray and add to it. So there we have it, our block. I definitely should have the height, right? I got 10 inches of height on this, and I have almost 10 inches of, about 10 inches of width. So that worked out nicely for me. My strips were about 2.5 inches wide, and then the height I needed. And if we're to measure what I previously made, just like to help you with the math if I can. You see, I haven't squared it up because I haven't decided on what I'm doing. You know, I'm going to be able to get, well, more than 10 inches of height there. But my width is about 9.25. So I've got plenty of wiggle room in all of this. So let's put these up on the design wall and flip the camera around again. All right, let's say goodbye to the ladies for this week, and I will flip the camera around. Hello. We'll bring you back over here. And there's our 2 blocks, right? The rainbow, the gradation is working really nicely. I'm very happy with it. My rainbow's working nicely. It's all good. How can we go wrong? It's rainbows, right? And even if you didn't do a color order, you just had 6 or 7 plus the background fabrics that you're playing with, you really can't go wrong. That's the thing with these blocks. You really can't screw it up, right? Some basic improv techniques, some fun, simple sewing, and a lot of play together. So that is me. Actually, I need to see that. I just need to keep them on all the time. That's it for me. This is week 2 of the Quilters Playcation Adventure Sew-Along, our rainbow theme for 2024. Just a reminder that if you want any extra notifications about Quilters Playcation events or my own events, sign up for my newsletters. Got to do that shameless self-promotion here. You can sign up for the newsletters on quiltersplacation.com or on cherylarkison.com. 2 separate newsletters, totally not shared email lists. Each one only comes out once a month if I'm doing well. And that's it. So you won't be bombarded with me. I love having you here. I love welcoming you into my space so that we can come together and play together, because that's the whole point, is that we are playing together. Quilting doesn't have to be work. Let's let it be play. So everybody, stay warm, stay safe, stay off the roads if you need to, and we will see you next week for week 3. But for now, enjoy your rainbows. Take care, everybody.